I'm sure you've all had family heirlooms that have been handed down to you through generations that you've enjoyed, whether it be a piece of furniture, a tea set, or just silverware. All of these things are special to us because they belong to ancestors. To me, I was always interested in my family's quilts. I like to look at the quilts that my great-grandmother and her mother had made, and I like to use them and put them in our house and decorate with them. I was always fascinated by the intricate needlework and wanted to take up quilting myself. So when I was a young teenager, my mother taught me how to quilt. I've really enjoyed quilting because I feel like it's something that I'm going to be able to pass on to my children, as well as something I can share with people now. I've made many quilts when friends have had babies or when they've gotten married to give to them as gifts. I'd like to show you one of the quilts that I'm currently working on. This is a piece from a quilt that I'm currently working on. It's a flannel quilt that I'm making for a couple that I know that are getting married soon. This quilt is blues and reds and greens. You can see I also have some of the other pieces here from it. Since I've been working on this quilt in my apartment, it's important that I use small tools that I don't have to take a lot of stuff up to my apartment to work on. So I've been using a mini ruler and a mini rotary cutter. These are much smaller than the regular size, and they're something that's easy to travel with, so I can take it wherever I go. The rotary cutter helps me to cut straight edges, so my quilt can go together square and I don't have crooked squares. I've started these pieces by cutting out the biggest piece. Then I cut out a piece slightly smaller. The biggest piece is 8 inches and the smaller piece is 5 inches. The 5-inch square I sewed right on top of the 8-inch square. My next step will be cutting out around the back where the 8-inch square is covered with the 5-inch. I'm going to then take that square and put it on a different square. Because of this, it shows the same pattern throughout the quilt design on different squares. I've done this pattern many times before, and I always like the way it turns out. It's important that you use flannel because flannel will give you the rugged look on the rough edges. These edges are not folded under and sewn. They're just left rough and zigzagged around. Because of that, they give a frayed look and they're just a little bit more country-like. It's also neat how the different pattern shows up in different areas. You can see it makes the quilt go together, having this different fabric in different places. Because you're working with flannel, which is more likely to ravel, it's important that each of these pieces are serged together. That helps to keep them from unraveling. As you can see, this quilt has gotten quite old and could unravel at the seams, but because they're serged, it will stay together a long time. Once you're done piecing the top of the quilt, you have the back of the quilt. The back of the quilt is one solid sheet, unless you don't have enough fabric in one solid sheet and you have to sew together two, but it will always be one solid color. In between the back of the quilt and the front of the quilt will go batting. Cotton batting is what makes a quilt plush. Once you have these 3 layers together, the next step is to tie the quilt together, or quilt it. In the case of my flannel quilts, I usually tie them. Tying them is where you just take a piece of yarn or floss and at each corner you tie a knot. If you were to quilt it, you would actually take a needle and thread and quilt a design throughout the quilt. You can do that either by hand or by machine. The final step is binding. This binding just finishes the edge of the quilt so you have a nice blanket. I've done many projects, as you can see. Right now I'm working on another baby blanket and have recently completed a bag. All of this quilting has been very special to me because I can pass these quilts and these things that I've made on to other people so they can enjoy all of what I have learned.